Hello everybody and welcome to the launch of the Tolmers Village website. My name is Patrick Allen and together with Nick Waits we have created this website to display an archive of photographs, newsletters, press cuttings and stories of the Tolmers Village community from 1973 to 1979. So I'll begin by explaining my part in all of this. I arrived in Tolmer Square one afternoon in October 1973 to inquire whether there were any empty houses to squat. And I met Ches Chesney, and he said, go along to Drummond Street, where there might be some houses there. And so I went to Drummond Street, and I met Sasha Craddock at number 117. And she said, yeah, number 119 next door is empty. Although she said it's been bagged by her friend Rod Smith. But I said, well, I think that's okay. You can tell Rod, I'm going to move in on Saturday. So the following Saturday, about 3 days later, I turned up in my Hillman Superminx with Colin Ferguson, and we moved in. And in fact, Rod Smith arrived in Tolmer Square 3 years later. I moved into number 12. So anyway, at this point, my life changed. And I have really never looked back. It was my entry to the Tolmers community and to the rest of my life, the beginning of 6 years in Drummond Street and in Tolmer Square. And I created 2 homes. I had 2 years in Drummond Street and 4 years at number 11 and 12 Tolmer Square. They were great places to live. They were in central London and they had the advantage of being completely rent-free, although initially lacking in some basic amenities. But in making them habitable, I perfected a lot of DIY skills, drilling and sawing and painting and glazing and plumbing, electrics and drainage and roofing. And then at the same time, I joined in with everybody else, helping to build the community and making friendships with squatters and local residents and shopkeepers like Giant Patel, J.D. Shah and Mr. and Mrs. Vine. And then I took part in the carnivals. I helped to organize parties and banquets. And I played music, mainly flute sonatas with Jamie Goff and Rod Smith. And now I'm just going to try and share my screen and see if this works. I've got day one of my squatting career where I'm moving into 119 Drummond Street. Now, and that's me in the window. And there is Ches Chesney making a funny face, and that's Sasha in the doorway with Mr. Patel, Giant Patel, who owned the Diwana Belpuri house next door, who allowed us to use his lavatory in the basement. And there is Jamie Goff and Mr. Patel. And that was the room I created on the first floor after a few weeks, which became my study bedroom. And that is Colin Ferguson that I moved into 119 Drummond Street, a friend of mine from university, and Barry Brookshaw, who joined us on day one. We didn't know him, but he turned out to be brilliant, and he helped us to fix all sorts of things like the water. And then that is the carnival the following summer in 1974, playing chamber music on the pavement. This is a picture of number 11 Tolmer Square, where I moved to after Drummond Street, and in this picture I'm mending the glass in the French doors. Here is a shot of Corinne Perlman, Barry Shaw and Colin Ferguson on my balcony at number 11. I led the legal team which opposed the evictions which were brought to court by Joe Levy. And in 1977, I started my own law firm up the road in Camden Town. I'll stop sharing my screen now. What happened next? I took a lot of photographs. But everything came to an end in 1979 when Camden took over Tolmer Square and demolished it. But the friendships I made in those days have endured, and I can count some of my very best friends as those who I met at that time. And it was a truly transformative experience, exactly what I was looking for at that time. I became part of an avant-garde
community of lefty progressives, hippies, dropouts, young professionals, a huge diversity and cultural mix. And we had cooking and conversation and carnivals and chat and holidays and trips. And I've always felt that to make sense of London, it's essential to put down roots in a small part of it. And that's what we did by creating Tolmers Village. And we were lucky to have an area bounded by 2 big roads and a railway, but otherwise we were cut off. And inside that triangle, it was very quiet and civilized. So Tolmers was very special. And we had access to almost unlimited property for our activities for nothing. We had the square for our carnivals. We had a disused bank, which we used for parties. We took over a shop for our Christmas banquet. We had created health food shops, and there were 4 pubs in the neighborhood to choose from. And paying no rent allowed us to experiment with life and lifestyles and new careers or no careers. And many relationships were forged, and there were some births and marriages, and the police left us alone, apart from occasional visits by our rather gentle community officer. So it was an experience that many of us have never got over, changed our lives for the better, as you'll read from the stories on the website, and in my case, provided the foundation for everything else that followed. So coming onto the website, I treasured my time at Tolmers for what it meant for me, and luckily I had an archive to help me to remember it. I'd taken many black and white pictures during the Tolmers years, which I developed in my Drummond Street and Tolmers darkrooms. I preserved the negatives and kept them in order and accessible, and when scanners came along, I digitized them, and I was able to enjoy them and share many pictures that I'd never seen before. Because at the time I'd only printed some of the best ones, because having a darkroom and printing is a real fiddle. But anyway, 3 years ago, I had a meeting with Nick Waits in Hastings to talk about his archive. He had kept all of his photographs and leaflets and press cuttings and slides and negatives all in trays and boxes. And clearly the thing to do was to digitize a lot, to preserve them and enable us to use them and access them more easily. So I agreed to pay the cost of that. And the next step was to create a platform to display them, which has led onto this website. I found a very good designer, Jordan Chatwin, and he had helped me with another website. And together, Jordan and me and Nick Waits and Nick Weeks, we've created this website, and we started to load up the images. And this process began in 2020. We met by Zoom every week and just kept going until we had more or less completed it. So we had no shortage of material, as we had over 3,000 black and white pictures, about 700 color ones, plus the newsletters and cuttings and invites. And along the way, Pedro George gave us another 500 color photographs. And next, to put some context around the pictures, we've been creating stories about our time in Tolmers. I've been setting up Zoom interviews with former squatters and residents, recording their experiences and then creating a story which we'd paste up. And we've now got about 22 stories pasted up, and we've got more being done all the time. And in fact, four new ones went up only this week. And the stories really bring our time in the 1970s back to life, and they're illustrated when possible by photographs of the events described. And we've added some history of the struggle and pre-square history. So where do we go from here? Well, there are more stories to record, and so I'm be in touch with many of you who I haven't been in touch with. I want to add a Tolmers Today section to describe the area post-1979, and in particular the current destruction of the area by the HS2 works, which has already destroyed some tragically some very, very nice parts of the Tolmers area. So there's more context and history to drop. But of course, we want to have a party and some social events. We wanted to have a big launch party, but due to COVID, we're having to do with this for now. Going forwards, I would like to create a Tolmers social hub so that we can maintain the friendships that we formed or recreate them. And luckily, I can make my office premises available for social events because my office is in North Gower Street, opposite the entrance to Tolmer Square, and we have a very nice space there and a private bar. So that's where the first event will be. And I'd like people to be writing up stories and contributing material with our help or by themselves, and we'll post them up. So we welcome suggestions about the site and how to improve it, make it more accessible, more fun, easier to use. It's taken 3 years to get to this point, but it's been well worth the effort. And as long as my resources allow, I'm committing to maintaining and supporting the website and the forum going forward. So I found the process of sorting and pasting up the photographs and doing the zooms hugely enjoyable. It's been like wearing one of those virtual reality headsets. I have been actually reliving the 1970s, and it comes back very powerfully as I do it. And I'd like to invite you to do the same by getting involved. So, so that's enough from me. So without more ado, I'm now going to hand over to Nick Waits to tell us a bit about his side of the website story and his vision for the future.
Oh, thanks, Patrick. It's absolutely great to see so many half familiar faces out there. Absolutely fabulous. For those who haven't met her, this is my partner, Jane, who incidentally was a squatter just down the road in Percy Street in the 1970s and worked in the town hall, Camden Town Hall, although we didn't meet at the time. Have to stress that very much. The revelation for me was when in 2010, I walked off the street into an art gallery in Berlin and saw huge life-size images of Tolmers Village projected onto the white walls. Wow, it was really dramatic. The colors, the place, the people, the energy and activism. And the audience who were looking at these images in the art gallery, most of whom were not born at the time, seemed absolutely fascinated. So that was when I realized that the Tolmers archives that I'd been carting around for years might yet be of interest to others. So I'm hugely grateful to Patrick, and my friend, my next door neighbor for many years, and my solicitor in several of my life's battles, has made it possible for everyone to see my archives, his own archives and those of others, by creating this remarkable website. How can we make the most of it? Here are some ideas. Exhibitions could be mounted in all kinds of different venues in the Tolmers area and elsewhere, in galleries, universities, community centres, related to themes of local interest and the many themes covered by the Tolmers experience. The website makes organising an exhibition easy. Anyone here could organise one. Find a venue with a budget for mounting exhibitions, select and share photos, order prints or high resolution digital files, send out invites, job done. Similarly, there's a scope for publications. And I think there's many different kinds of publications that could be produced based on these archives. We already have over 1,100 photos on the website from 18 photographers, and they've all been labeled and tagged. There are 22 stories and 32 collections. 200 people are tagged in photos of 82 street addresses. There is still plenty of digitized material to upload, and we could focus on covering aspects of special interest, such as then and now comparisons, for instance, and hopefully you'll have some other ideas. One thought is to have QR codes in the Tolmers area, linking directly to specific material on the website. That would be quite an interesting thing to do. My main job has been labeling and tagging the website photos. Not always so easy, as it was a long time ago, as you will all realize. A lot of forensic work is sometimes necessary to work out what and who is shown. Any help anyone can provide in supplying missing details will be much appreciated. So thanks, I'll hand back to Patrick, and I look forward to what you have to say.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I'm just going to invite Nick Weeks, who's our website designer, just to say a couple of words about the process of turning the website into reality.
Good evening. Hope you can all hear me. I'm not a very loud person anyway. I'll just try and keep this as smooth as I can. Okay, so my involvement with the project began when Nick Waits asked me to scan a large quantity of newspaper cuttings, and that was several years ago now, before 2020 in fact. And that was a hell of a task, but reading through I just got into reading them as I was scanning them, and not that I charged for that particular time, but and it just began to kind of become compelling. Anyway, that was the first kind of blast of it. I wasn't quite aware of the vastness of this photographic archive at that point, or that what the occupation of Tolmers Square was about, or even anything about it really. But it was really fascinating, and it was tying in with a lot of films that I was watching that were set in that time, things by Lindsay Anderson and so on. Over the time we've taken constructing this website, I've learned a lot about housing in London, but probably not enough. How it's often sacrificed for more expedient things like high-rise office space, of course, and obviously the recent high-speed rail impact. But that's rather negative, really, compared to what we've achieved. I've also learned a lot about web design and coding. Obviously, you always do with every job, but this one was special and presented a lot of challenges, especially modifying WordPress in lots of ways to cope with the scale of the archive and give Nick Waits and Patrick something to work with, really, to help them to kind of get things under control. And it was great really working with a designer as dedicated to excellence as Jordan is. I don't know if he's joined the meeting or not, but I was really, I felt kind of, yeah, I'm stuck for words now, but I was very pleased to be working with him. He's a great designer. And I'm very proud of it. I think it's one of the most intuitive photo archives around. It's really easy to browse into and kind of follow your nose through the whole thing. And it's just kind of done differently. It's sort of, it seems to make it an easy process to reach some interesting material, probably because there's just so much of it. And much of the photography, of course, is excellent. I mean, there's some of it's knocked me out. There's some real masterpieces in there, not least the very first image on the website, which I just find completely hypnotic. It's just so many faces all looking at you or in different directions. And there's just like, you know, it's just pure 70s. It's amazing. Yeah, in fact, it's sort of resonated with me. I was growing up in the mid-70s. I was about 13 or something. And it really does take me straight back there. But I wasn't in London. I was in Sissinghurst and countryside. But it's very strong with nostalgia. So loads of connections to be drawn, like I said, with films and so on, and the culture of the period. And I think it's probably going to work out to be a rather important snapshot of London. Once they get wind of it, I think it's going to be something that may be curated in future. By that I mean that somebody might be after it. Not me. It just seems like such an amazing body of work. It is like a proper archive, and a very worthy one at that.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Thank you very much for helping turn it into reality. So I hope everybody has had a good sift the website. We've tried very hard to make it easy to get into the bit that you like, so you can look up yourselves or your year or your house or your friends. And so although there are so many photographs, hopefully you can find the ones which are of interest to you. So now I'd like to throw this open to anybody who wants anything about themselves or the website. The way to do that is to raise your hand on the screen or to use the sort of hand tool on Zoom if you'd like to say something. Eddie, your hand is up first. So David, you've got to unmute yourself.
I'd just like to say good evening to you all. None of you will know me. I'm not one of your gang at all in that sense. As Patrick and Nick know, I'm the sort of interloper because it was my great-great-grandfather who built Tolmers Square. And I have to admit, in the 1970s, when you guys were all squatting, I'd finished my university career and was starting work in High Wycombe, and I had no idea what the heck you guys were up to in our old property. We'd actually sold out in 1970, of course, having been ripped off by Mr. Levy and having to sell cheap because we own numbers 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So when I hear you saying you squatted in number 11, you were squatting in one of the houses my grandmother had owned. But I just admire what you guys achieved because I look at Tolmer Square today. I have been around the modern Tolmer Square, of course. And it's as a result of the effort of all you fellas that what my great-great-grandfather set out to do, build housing for Londoners to live in London, still exists today. And it's actually taken me on a very personal story because I've been doing all my family tree research and realized that my great-great-grandfather was at the forefront of a whole group of builders who came up from Torquay. And they actually built a very substantial amount of London. In fact, Tolmers Square is about the only piece that they built that doesn't still exist. All the rest of the streets that I've tracked down through to Taylor Cummings and Dorr, the builders who are all loosely related to me through marriage, all still actually exist. They're mainly in the Earl's Court area of London where they did all the building work. So in a way, Tolmers Square became a launch pad for me to learn an enormous amount about the building of our city, as well as I say, being able to say thank you to you guys for rescuing the spirit of Tolmers Square, even if the old buildings themselves, I'm afraid, had to disappear, rather sadly.
Thank you very much, David. And I highly recommend everybody to read David's story on the website, which is really fascinating, because it tells us about the bit of times before we got there. And some very nice photographs with the square looking remarkably tidy for it against its final decline. So there's now a hand from Joe Rivette's going to bring Joe in, please.
Hi, thanks. And again, yeah, massive thanks to yourself and Nick and the other Nick and so on. This is the best present I could have ever imagined, to be really honest. And I just wanted to say, well, first, I'm behind the curve. I have not uploaded my story or my scanned photographs and so on. They're still in the drawer because really one big reason, which is that Tolmers and the whole experience for me was like, it was a particular concentration of forces and creative energy. And the reason I left Tolmers early, before the sort of bitter end and so on, was that I could see the possibility of recreating or regrowing that creative energy in other places, in other settings that were maybe a little less volatile and maybe a little more stable. So I found myself in the Hebden Bridge area, basically building the same thing. And it forced me to ask, what was this Tolmers thing all about? Okay, free accommodation, walking distance of central London. Well, that was great, but it was a lot more than that. It was a place where experiments could be done, where people could cross-fertilize in all kinds of interesting ways. They could invent new ways of living and alternative futures and so on. They could challenge the system in a sort of semi-safe environment, and they could realize things about themselves, and I certainly did that myself, in a way which is not always possible in daily life. So then I kind of took the spirit of Tolmers and say, okay, let's do this in Hebden Bridge. Well, I wasn't the first here. And then at a later point, several decades after, I thought, well, that's very nice, but could it, scale up? So then I kind of took on Greater Manchester as my kind of, hunting ground, if you like. Now, it's not, I think my point is the learning that was done for me in the Tolmers years was absolutely precious and unique and so on. And I can't thank everybody here enough, for that experience. And I hope some people here also got some of that in some way. And I'm sure everyone had their own kind of story to tell and their own angle on the whole thing. But again, massive thank you. And all I can say is now, well, some of us may be around in 40 years, who knows, why not? We have the, the means to do that if we have the will. And so let's keep that kind of, that creative thing, that creative spirit and flame, going, and pass it on to our children and our generations and so on. But that to me is what this meeting is all about. So maybe sometime, Patrick, I could come back to your offices and put on an exhibition, which is not all about the past, although the past is what shapes the present, but also about dreams of the future, which indeed I was having in those days, in the mid-70s. And just to name a name, well, Paul here, Paul Nicholson, was part of an event that we organised at University College London, where else, to say, let's talk about the future city. What could it mean? Who does it? What happens? How does it work? And so on. And well, to be honest, for myself, I'm still on that track. And I can guess others here are also doing that. Anyway, so it's really, really great to meet you all and hope to follow it up. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. So, well, I want your story, please. If you can submit something, that would be great. And if you've got some photographs in your top drawer, dig them out and scan them and send them in too. Yeah. Right. So there is Susan Croft has got her hand up. So Susan, would you like to come in, please?
Hi. I must admit, I kind of have, when I see these sort of sites and stories, I have squatting envy, because I feel like I missed that moment. I kind of was at university at the tail end of the 70s, and the other, I probably could have got caught into it in the 80s in certain parts of London, but it was already kind of the great moment had passed. But I mean, I've been fascinated by this whole movement and a larger alternative culture ever since. I run an organisation called Unfinished Histories, which documents the history of the alternative theatre movement. And Nick Weeks made available some photos some years ago when I did an exhibition, which went to several venues in London, called Restaging Revolution's Alternative Theatre in Lambeth and Camden. We did it focused on Camden because there were so many theatre companies. About probably 50% of the London-based theatre companies listed an address in Camden, and a key reason for that was that they were based in squats or licensed squats or kind of housing co-ops and so on, because they were cheap or free, and Camden had quite a good rep for supporting squats with licenses. So there's started gathering some histories of people who were in Prince of Wales Square. There was one company called Stirabout who actually rehearsed in a squat on Bishop's Avenue. And so I'm very interested in the kind of larger history of where Tolmer Square fits within the Camden squatting map and within the London squatting map. And anyway, just wanted to show, this was the book that showed of the exhibition that we did a few years ago for that, which has got a couple of Nick's photos. So it's brilliant to see them all up on the site. So I mean, I'm sort of a curator, archivist, historian, and as I say, we're looking at alternative theatre, but alternative theatre and lots of other, alternative music and so on, just couldn't have happened without that hidden subsidy of free or very cheap housing, which didn't just enable so many experiments to go forward and sort of socially focused projects to go forward without having to be quite as reliant on grants and so on. So that's kind of my take on it. And just if anyone's interested, I'll put the website for Unfinished Histories in the chat. And just to say also, Camden Archives, I'm sure, will be very interested in having, you know, a talk on this, and you know, maybe an exhibition. I've done a couple there, and they're very supportive. So, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Susan. Well, I'm now going to call on, there aren't any hands at the moment I can see. I'm going to start calling on some former squatters just to come and tell us a little bit about their time and what it meant for them. Some of them have already written it up on the website. So Doug Smith in the Bahamas, just say a few words about how was it for you, Doug?
Well, first of all, Patrick and Nick, great job. I want to say I've known Nick for over 50 years, because we started in the Bartlett in 1971. So we've been going along this road for quite a long time, and we actually got into squatting before Tolmers in a kind of slightly accidental way. Me and Barry had nowhere to stay, and we had a friend with a flat in Islington, and the basement was actually empty. So we just decided to move down into the basement and take it over. Then Nick turned up with the same problem, nowhere to live, and suggested we go to Tolmer Square, which he had studied for one of his courses not long before. So, you know, as I said in my piece, we were keen, we were fearless, we didn't know any of the downside of what might happen, and it was very exciting. And also we needed somewhere to live. So as described in the stories, we turned up in number 12, 2 of us went in, 2 of us hang around outside, and that was it. And it, you know, we always wanted it to be something a bit bigger than just us having somewhere to live. But obviously that was the prime mover. We needed somewhere to live. And then slowly people turned up, like you and, you know, a few of the others who I see up here. Great to see you all, by the way. Fantastic what 50 years can do to one's face. But anyway, happens to us all. And it was just a great experience. And the fact that I'm here now, I've been overseas for 35 years, which is quite a long time. But I nevertheless feel more of a connection with some of the people here, and you, Patrick, and, you know, Nick, than I do with anybody else in a strange sort of way, because it was a very formative time. We were all young, we were in our early 20s, we were making relationships, developing attitudes, making, you know, sense of the world in a way, or trying to make sense of the world, or trying to make a way for ourselves in the world. And we all went in diverse directions. Now, in the end, I've ended up in a rather conventional, being an architect. In fact, I'm in my office now because it's only lunchtime in the Bahamas. Still working away at, you know, drawings and specifications and contractors and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's still a lot in me and in what I do that comes from Tolmers and the people from Tolmers who I met. I think, you know, my mind was kind of developed, my character was kind of developed in that atmosphere. So I'm truly grateful to having had a chance to do that, have that experience. And even if, you know, I'm not, you know, cutting edge anymore, I still have a lot of good memories. The other thing is, I think it's interesting, there's a few kind of false memory syndrome connections. A lot of what you know, put in there, I'd forgotten. A lot of when my corrections for my story, I'd forgotten. And it's nice to have that sorted out, you know, have a little bit more, you know, kind of realism and record, and whether it's the photographs or the other stories about what really happened. Anyway, thanks a lot, Patrick, and Nick and everyone else.
Thanks very much. It's great to have you on the thing, Doug. So I'm going to bring in Corinne Palmer now. If you'd like to unmute yourself, Cora, who joined us in Drummond Street in 1973. Cora.
Yeah, but there are 2 of us here. Sasha.
Have her turn.
Yeah, cheers. Sasha is chopping the almonds. And
you do your bit.
Yeah.
How was it for you, Cora?
Well, there's an excellent interview in there, kind of by I was interviewed by one Patrick Allen, who seems to be a bit like that guy in Local Hero, who kind of has all those different jobs in the village, you know, like pops up as the banker and the post office person and all the rest of it. So yes, so you managed to kind of tease out an interview, and yeah.
Can we ask Sasha to stop chopping for a moment? Actually.
Oh yeah, it's too noisy. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think it's a sort of fantastic kind of job that you've done this, and you know, it's really great to have somewhere to, you know, I mean, I've got so much kind of stuff and debris that's all unorganized, so it's just incredible to have an organized archive of that particular period. And I think kind of, you know, with you know, the whole team up with the two Nicks and so on has been, you know, really great in terms of the way in which such a rich kind of history is organized. So I kind of find that really inspiring, and it keeps on making me think I should do the same thing for other areas of my life. But somehow the whole point is that you've done it for this and it works. So, you know, fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Cora. Do you want to bring Sasha to the microphone?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Sasha.
Well, I'm thrilled that we have this launch at long last. Madly proud of you, Patrick and Nick, for doing this for us, because in a way I'm also proud. I can just show off like mad about the past now. And Doug is right about false memory syndrome. It's very good to have it sort of slightly cleared up and straightened up in some way. I think the three-dimensionality of the site is exceptional. I don't know anything else. I mean, it really is an advanced site, and I'm sure many people will copy, because in a way you can go to one angle, you can go from any aspect, you can search in every way. And so it stops that terrible linear idea of history. And I think anybody looking who's young, or any of us or someone younger, will actually be led in the most enchanting manner that does fit the spirit of Tolmers. So I'm madly proud of it, and proud of our past, and also proud of the fact we looked so good when we were younger. It's shocking to see. So thank you, but thank you all of you for doing it. And I can't wait to fish out more photographs and shove them up and actually write a better account of myself than your CV account, Patrick, which is temporary. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sasha. So I'm glad you didn't deter me from moving into 19 next door.
I tried, because what did I say?
You said it was bagged, but I didn't listen. So I'm now going to bring David Watkinson, without whom we might all have been evicted. So David was not a squatter, he was a barrister, and he is the world's greatest legal expert on squatting. And in 1975, we instructed him to fight off Joe Levy, which he managed to do successfully in the High Court. So can you remember anything about that, David, or what would you like to say?
Yes, I do remember it, Patrick. Hello, everybody. And it's a real delight to be here this evening and to be speaking about that time, which is a time which produces a story which really needs to be told, recorded, and congratulations to Patrick and to Nick for putting it together. I wanted to give Nick yet another congratulation, and that is on the book Squatting the Real Story from the early 1980s, which I still reckon is the best production about squatting that there has been before or since, which explains what happened and what it was like. At Tolmers Square, yeah, you were very kind there, Patrick, in describing my involvement in Tolmers Square. Just to say to you all that Patrick has taken a statement from me, which I have yet to verify and sign off, a bit like the Sue Gray report, and that will contain more information about well, what happened when I was representing Tolmers Square. I think I got instructed because I had developed a bit of a reputation for representing squatters. Now, this actually had not been my intention when I started out my legal career. I'd intended to become an employment lawyer and work with trades unions, trades councils, and workers' organizations and so on. But while I was doing my training, the procedure for evicting squatters that we were faced with in the Tolmers Square cases was becoming law. I learned about it. I passed it on to some housing organizations that I was involved in. I acted as an advisor in court cases before I was able to represent. And when I started representing, people said, well, now you can stand up for us in court and argue our cases. So that's how it happened. So I was diverted into being a housing lawyer from being an employment lawyer. I actually did not know anything more about housing than squatting when I started, but I had to learn quickly on the job. So the Tolmers Square Day, as I remember, was a series of cases which one by one we lost. And obviously, squatting cases are not very easy to defend because it stands by the definition itself that someone who is squatting, who is a trespasser, has no right to occupy. So the defences were entirely procedural. Had they got this new procedure right? The new procedure, by the way, had been devised in order to make it easier to get squatters out, not to make it more difficult for landlords to get squatters out, but it still had to be complied with. And towards the end of the day, there was a case, Patrick will remember the number of the property, I think, which
217 North Gower Street, I think it was.
Yeah. And there we were able to put up a defence that the occupiers had not been properly identified by the landlords when they served the proceedings. To be the technical about it, they had to take reasonable steps to identify the occupiers to comply with the procedure. And with some hesitation, the judge decided that reasonable steps had not been taken, and so the possession claim failed. And what I remember is I think we were all sent outside while he pondered what decision he was going to make. And I think not all of us went back. I think what I remember is the lawyers and the people who were living in the property were in the courtroom, and a whole mass more of the rest of you were in the corridor outside. And he came back in, he delivered his judgment, he dismissed the possession claim, and I think we ran out into the corridor and did a thumbs up, and we won. And so cheers echoed along the corridor. and that, of course, was a considerable setback for Levy, because if they weren't able to get hold of possession of any one of the properties, and that held up the entire program of development. One other memory of that campaign was, you remember there was this enormous billboard for the film Tommy, just on the street side of Tolmers Square, and the wording on the bottom part of the billboard was, "Tommy, he will tear your soul apart." And some joker from the square got up there and altered the wording so that it read, "Levy, he will tear your home apart." And that gave me a chuckle every time. So it still gives me a chuckle when I go by the site, and I remember that billboard. Anyway, the other reason, of course, why I remember it all very fondly is because it was a success, and barristers tend to cherish their successes and talk rather more about them than they do about their failures. So thank you very much, Tolmers Square, for giving me a success.
Yeah. Well, anyway, David, thank you. It was brilliant. Without that successful day in court and Mr. Justice Croom Johnson and the technicalities, we might all have been chucked out. So that we lived to fight another day, and then Camden took over the whole scheme peacefully. 4 years, which was brilliant. And it was Frank Dobson who allowed us to live there peacefully for the next 4 years. So now I'm going to have to bring in somebody else. Meg, you've disappeared from the screen. So above her on my screen is Susie Nelson, who Susie, I'm not sure I've seen you for about 40 years actually, but be very nice to hear from you.
Hello, but yeah, gosh, I haven't thought what to say, but say hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. I was squatting there from early days on, and I'm in one of your pictures that in an Afghan coat with Ches. Outside your house, Patrick.
Oh yes, that's right.
When I had long hair.
Yeah, right. That's on my day one. Yeah, that's right.
But and I think I remember going up on your roof and looking at the slates. Yeah, I lived in first in Euston Street, then in Hampstead Road, and then in North Gower Street. So in several places, but moved on to squatting in Islington later, where I was involved in Essex Road Women's Centre. And yeah, moved on to lots of other things, but yeah, I have fond memories of squatting.
Great. So anyway, well, it's very nice to have you.
Thanks very much for organising this, to you and to Nick.
Okay, right. So now I'm going to land on Tim Wilson. Tim, are you there? Would you like to unmute? Tim was the historian of Tolmer Square, living on the south side, produced a very scholarly account of the prehistory of Tolmers before going on to a very eminent career. We can't hear you, Tim. You're still muted. Still muted. You're still muted.
Different unmute button. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
It is wonderful to see people. It is astonishing how much some of us sadly forget. But sometimes remembering is not particularly good. In an attempt to gain some moral high ground, after leaving Tolmers Square in 1977, when I got a very respectable job in the National Maritime Museum and was living in East Greenwich, I suddenly got arrested by the police because I had, as I said, in an attempt to gain some moral high ground, sent the London Borough of Camden some money in lieu of rates. And the consequence of this was that some 2 years later, Mr. Plod turned up at the door at 6:30 in the morning and arrested me for payment of the entire rates on the south side buildings of Tolmers Square. And I can't really remember the details, but it was absolutely fixed in my mind that Patrick was the lawyer who sorted this out for me and got me off. And I have been telling my wife about the wonderfulness of Patrick Allen in this respect for at least 20 years, only to discover in the rewriting of history in this marvelous process that Patrick and the Nicks have produced, that it wasn't Patrick at all, but it was a quite different young lawyer who was a friend of my wife's. But so I hope that Patrick's ears have been glowing with appreciation for 30 years, but if so, in entirely falsely. Yeah, I did the history. I wish I'd known Mr. Geddy and learnt the family's side of it. I just had one historical question really for the creators of the archive, which is, as it were, the enemy side of the story. I don't know if the firm of Levy still exists or if their archives have been deposited in one of the business archives. They may well have been destroyed, but it would be very wonderful to have and to be able to complement the archives with the story as seen from inside Levy's office.
Yeah, well, we have actually tracked down a few things about Joe Levy, including an interview with him where he said it was his proudest moment to create the Euston Tower. But I don't know what happened to stock conversion. It was very much his baby, and I don't know whether it survived after he left this world. So anyway, thank you very much, Tim. So who can I land on now? What about Shilpa Shah? Hi, Shilpa. Can you unmute? Can you unmute? Can you unmute? We can't hear you, Shilpa. That's better.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi, long time.
Yeah. So you were brought up in the spice shop on Drummond Street.
That's right, JD Shah.
Your father, JD Shah.
That's right, the great JD. Yeah, very, very fond memories. Obviously, only as a child, hanging out at the bank. Do you remember the bank as kids during the holidays? Where Sasha used to do art classes and stuff?
Was that the bank where we had our discos?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, very fond memories. The place has changed completely. It's just nice to see you all. I'm sorry, I did join late. I trust this is being recorded, so we'll get a chance to see it again.
Yeah, no, it's being recorded. Yeah, and so Charles William and another member of the Shah family is also there. Can you remember what was happening in Drummond Street in 1973?
Yeah, hi everybody. 1973, I was about 4 years old.
Okay.
And I do remember playing on the White Rocks and in Sasha's house. I remember Corrie, and I remember lots of the people in the whole frame, and it was such a happy, beautiful place. That's what my memory of the square was.
Raj, tell Sasha about her cheese plant.
The cheese plant, I don't remember about the cheese plant. But what I do remember is when Sonna, we all went round to Sasha's house for a big party, and everyone had to come in and actually look at her big painting on the front wall. And every single person walked in and didn't actually know what this painting was. And only Sonna then told Sasha, oh, it's an abstract painting and there's birds here and there's this and there's that. And Sasha just fell in love with Sonna at that stage. The only person who seemed to work out what Sasha had drawn or painted. Yeah. But no, the environment is great. And I'm currently based about a couple of 100 yards away from Tolmer Square at the moment. So back in my Hampstead Road building. You're only around the corner.
Back in your office there on the Hampstead Road. That's great.
And we're working away on tax returns at the moment, so it's
okay,
it's fun.
Okay, you got a few deadlines to comply with that. So look, I think I can see Ollie lurking, Ollie Banham, lurking on the sofa there. Is that you, Ollie? Not getting any reaction there. Okay, what about Sally Craddock? I call on Sally Craddock to unmute and tell us about.
There you are, you're on.
I'll tell you about what. I'm really a false member of this because I'm simply the mother of Sasha, and I often stayed both at Tolmers and stayed first of all in Drummond Street, which was very exciting, and with waiting for the lovely giant who is about 3 feet high, the gentleman who owned all these empty places. Do you remember Drummond Street? Oh, it's still there, but it was then, well, anyway, it was marvelous. And I loved all of you, and I mean, I'm Sasha's mother, for goodness sake. I'm over 90, and I shouldn't be part of any of you, but thank goodness that was, because you just made my life. Absolutely. It was such fun. Thank you. I feel an interloper, but thank you, Patrick.
No, but I want to hear about the spiders on your first night in Drummond
Oh
Street.
my God, that wasn't even Tolmer Square, darling. That was
Drummond Street.
It was Drummond Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think why I had to stay there, because in fact
Yes, why did you have to stay there? You had your own place.
Oh no, I didn't, but it was in Oxford, and it was quite a long way away. And anyway, I just stayed the night, as far as I can remember. And I was working in London, and I can't remember what I was doing there, but never mind. And there we broke the door of number, what was it, the way, end one, in Drummond Street, and went in, and it was inhabited by spiders, rats, mice, I'm terrified of that sort of thing. And I had to sleep on the floor all night. I can't remember who I slept with. Anyway, it wasn't terribly because it was uneventful.
Right.
And anyway, there was a respectable mother of Sasha Graphic. And oh God. And then there came this marvelous person called Giant, who was the Indian restaurateur. Do you remember him? Any of you? The Giant? He's
Yes,
not.
we do. Yeah.
Oh, and he allowed us to go under the pavement to where there was a wash basin, which actually belonged to his restaurant. And people would queue up with their little sponge bags with their toothbrushes and their toothpaste, everything to respectabilize themselves after a night with spiders and rats and sleeping on the bare floors. It was wonderful.
Good. That sounds great. Okay, Sasha, Sally, we're going to turn that into a story for you to paste up onto the website. I'm now going to call on Debbie Banham. Debbie, can you hear me?
Hi there, Patrick. Thank you.
Hi. Tell us how it was for you.
So I'm not going to reminisce. I just want to say huge thank you to you and Nick and everybody that's been involved in the website. It's absolutely fantastic. And I promise I will get my photos scanned one of these days and let you have them. So I've got some from Euston Street, which weren't even mine in the first place. So I think, you know, they really should be part of the public record. There speaks the historian. And it's just wonderful to see you all. And I was thinking, you know, it's really a shame we're not all together in your office. And thank you for doing my mum's will, by the way. And but then I thought, but then Doug wouldn't be there because he's in the Bahamas. So there is one good thing about Zoom after all, is that people can Zoom in from across the world. And I just wanted to say that it wasn't Ollie who was on the sofa, it's actually Frank Goodingham.
Ah, Frank, right.
So Frank can say hello now.
Hi, Frank.
You're there, look, say hi to everybody.
Hi to everybody.
That's it.
Okay.
Hi.
They say, can you make that large?
Okay, so I just want to say thank you very much, and yeah, fantastic job, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. All right, I spy Meg Rossoff. Meg, would you like to come to the front, please?
Yeah, hi. I had to take the dog out because we're having dinner with Sasha and Cora tonight, so we have to go in a minute. But we could pick it up there if it's still going.
No. Let's hear from you now.
Okay. Well, I was the briefest person probably, and never really officially at Tolmers at all. Oops, I've lost you now. Oops, there you are. But I lived with Doug. Both communally and carnally for a year, and sort of met everybody that year and just had the most, I couldn't believe it really. I just thought this was the wildest bunch of people I ever met. Everybody meeting for breakfast in the pub and talking about who'd been sleeping with whom the night before, which I thought was fantastic. Anyway, and I was also very grateful not to actually live in Tolmers because it struck me as being kind of a slum, really. Which I know we're not supposed to say, but let's face it. But it was an amazing slum, and it was full of absolutely amazing people. And just looking at all the pictures that are up on the website, which is just fantastic, Patrick, as somebody said, everybody looks pretty amazing young, and it is kind of shocking to see some of us for the first time in 50 years. However, time wounds all heals, or whatever they say. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, of the people who I'm still in touch with, they're people who were still my friends back then. And it's a real testament to the strength of all those relationships. So yeah, even as an honorary member, I was and still am pretty thrilled to have just been on the edges of it all.
Yeah, fantastic, Meg. Well, what it did was it pulled you back to London, didn't it? You went back to America and it didn't work. It wasn't so good. You had to come back to London and rejoin us all.
No, that's absolutely true. And in fact, New York in the 1980s was just all about money. And I just missed all the kind of, I don't know what it was, the sort of dirt and the and the free love and the mad concerts. And, you know, in fact, I was thinking the other day, I saw a van called I Can Turn a Corner, which is, you know, some kind of, you know, bringing people out of poverty. But all I could think of was a band that Doug had told me about. Do you remember, Doug? It was, if you don't remember, it's a tragedy because they were called I Can Turn a Corner, and it was a punk version of I Can Tina Turner. Mm-hmm. We also went to my first ever punk pub band, which was called Blunt Instrument. And of course, I remember all this stuff because I was only there for a year, so it really stuck out of my mind. For everybody else, it was just a kind of long continuum. But yeah, I Can Turn a Corner made a big impression on me. and the Clash. I went to the Clash concert with Italia. Well, I was sitting next to Italia, and I was absolutely terrified. It was at the Music Machine in Camden. I was terrified by the people in the audience. They were utterly, I mean, and I thought the balcony was going to crash down as well because everybody was stomping around so much. And Italia, being utterly fearless, just turned to this terrifying, bald, kind of skinhead punk, God knows what, you know, decorated with razor blades, and said, "Do you know what time the concert is going to start? It's running very late." And he very politely said, "Oh, it shouldn't be longer than about 10 minutes or so." So, I mean, I do have all these kind of completely mad memories of that year. I should probably expand my written bit a little bit, but I'm not sure it had as much to do with Tolmers as it just had to do with, you know, being away and living in Camden, living with Doug, and doing steel sculpture at St. Martin's, which Doug was unbelievably rude about, and said they looked like crashed airplanes, which of course in retrospect they did, but everybody took it terribly seriously there. And then, you know, just kind of little things like, you know, what things cost. I mean, you know, because I was only there for a year, I remember that it was 4p to get from, you know, Camden to St. Martin's on the bus, and, you know, half a pint of beer at the Lord Palmerston was 7p, and, you know, just that kind of stuff. And Dominique always being criticized for never buying a round. Don't know if that's changed.
Nothing's changed there, no.
So yeah, so that, I mean, that's the tip of my iceberg of memories, but it was a astonishing year for me. And yeah, and it brought me back, and here I am still stuck in the world of Brexit and Boris Johnson, and so I can blame you all for that.
Okay.
On the other hand, I escaped Trump, so that's good too.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, mate. Look, I'm going to call on Mark Ferguson. Mark, are you the brother of Colin Ferguson that I remember? Stalwart of the Exmouth Arms.
Patrick, hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yeah, long time no see.
Yeah, 40 years maybe. So
yeah. Where
I
are
am
you?
Definitely,
where are you?
Where am I? I'm at home. Mine was only a fleeting presence in Tolmers, so I was in no way involved with establishing this alternative community. I was just very lucky to lock into it towards the end. I think it was the last couple of years that I had a fleeting presence, which marked me for life, it has to be said, in a good way. And I'm very appreciative of your efforts, of yourself and the Knicks. I think it's a great name for a group, Patrick and the Knicks. But, I was intrigued when I got your initial mail recently, and I thought, well, yeah, I would like to know, but I don't feel I have really a lot to contribute. I have no photos. And as I say, I wasn't really there for very long, but it was a great period.
We've got some nice photos of you, actually, but I can't quite, there doesn't seem to be any resemblance now.
Well, time has passed. I used to have fairly long hair. Now I'm having trouble with any. I'm wearing glasses, of course. I've put on a few pounds.
Yeah.
Basically, like all of us, I think. But yeah, it was, oh God, how long ago was it? Yeah, a long time.
45 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I say, it was something I looked into, and I enjoyed to the full. And then we all got thrown out and life went on. So.
That's right. Good. Okay. Well, very, very nice to hear from you. So that's partly what this process is about, is actually rediscovering people and bringing them back together again. So Paul Nicholson, Paul, would you like to say something? You've written a story for the website. Paul? Can't hear you. You're on mute. You're still on mute. How's that? No, can't hear. Okay. We might have to come back to you in a minute, Paul. No, can't hear. So there's another name I saw there that I haven't seen. Ruth Milburn. Ruth, can we hear from you? You're on. You're on mute. You're on mute. Still can't hear. Where the button is. Where is the button? Where are you?
Oh, can you
Yes,
hear?
Ruth. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just on the phone, so I couldn't find the controls. But anyway, I have now.
Yeah.
So I'm in New Zealand, and well, it's 9:15 now. Well, I managed to kind of get on here by 7:30, which I thought was quite extraordinary. So I was at Tolmers quite early on. I mean, I came to New Zealand in 1976. So a lot of what I remember last time I looked at the website, it was quite scanty, that earlier part. I don't have any, I have about 3 photographs that someone else sent me, Paul, I think. So I just, I will have another look because it's a while since I looked. I'm sure there's more. I remember being involved in a bit of the politics, going to demos and going and talking to some trade unions for some meeting we had, and lots of painting things and all the, well, I think the first couple of carnivals I was there for. But I remember quite a few of you guys. It was great times.
A very nice picture of you and Alex walking into the square.
I did see one, yeah. There's I've seen Paul and Inish, I guess, of the people there, and Francis a little bit. Yeah, that's about everyone that I've actually seen from. I know Paul sees a few more people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, very nice to hear from you. Lovely to be in touch after all these years.
It's a great thing, the website. It was lovely to have a look. I'll do it again.
Yeah, let's stay in touch. Let's go back to Paul, see if your microphone is working. No. No, I don't think it's going to work. Right, so who else would like to say something? What about Oren Harmon? Oren?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, everyone from Jerusalem. It's a pleasure seeing you all and meeting most of you for the first time, seeing your faces. I know Paul. I'm sorry we can't hear him, but Paul and I went to St. Pancras Cemetery about 10 years ago to visit the grave of George Price, who I'd be very curious to know how many of you here in the room actually knew him then, because amongst you at that time in the 70s, in the early 70s, was one of the greatest scientific minds of his generation, the American George Price, who had come to London from New York, having abandoned his family, and arrived at a certain stage in Tolmers, squatting, and during those few years wrote something which became known as the Price equation, which is a very deep treatment of the dynamic of natural selection. And in particular, it helps to solve one of the great mysteries that Darwin himself pointed to, namely where altruism comes from. And when George wrote that equation, he was so flabbergasted that it was him who wrote it, that he ran down Little Titchfield Road to All Souls at Langham and fell prostrate on his knees and became an evangelical Christian on the spot, having concluded that there was no way that he could have, with all the great minds ever since Darwin trying to solve this great evolutionary mystery where altruism comes from, there was no way that he could have been the one to have solved it unless God had chosen him to do so. And I think most of you, if you recognize the name, and there are a few photos that are up on the site, which is really gorgeous. And thanks, I join everyone in thanks for the wonderful work. George, I think most people just didn't know that he was such a brilliant scientist. He became an evangelical Christian and stopped eating, was down to skin and bones, and just would mumble about Jesus. And few knew that about his scientific work, but it's quite amazing that amongst all the gaiety and the young people, he was older, he was in his 50s, this sort of ghost-like character was amongst you guys, and doing some very, very serious world-class science. Unfortunately, he lost hope at a particular point in time and killed himself in the squat and Drummond Street. There were two Israeli guys who were living in the squat, two young Israelis, Shmulik Atiyah, I forget the name of the other one. I located them here in Israel. And they were living with George and had no idea that he was a scientist. But one of them discovered his body one morning. And I'd be very curious to know if anyone remembers George, and if you knew at the time that this brilliant mind who was working on one of the fundamental problems of evolutionary theory was amongst you all. Anyways, thanks so much, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, well, I think many of us were completely unaware of that, actually, so it's a fascinating story. And we've got a nice picture of you together in the cemetery.
Right, and I hope the link to the book is up there so that people can read about George and his story. He was living with Peg Leg Pete, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember Peg Leg Pete. Yeah.
And others. And anyways.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Oren. Right, we're sort of running out of time now. People are leaving us. Is there anybody here who hasn't said anything who would like to join in? Christoph Leinhard.
Hello.
Hello.
Do you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Oh, marvelous. Hello. Well, what's my story? The only person I know in this is Paul Nicholson, because we used to live together in the Lord Palmerston. And all of you, thank you very much, because I had a lovely time there. I knew a few, but I don't think we ever met. Well, we must have met in the square, but I don't remember any of you personally. But it's marvelous to see that you're all there. And thank you very much for organizing this. This is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And I've been having a whale of a time with the pictures and the website, and it's great.
Well, there are a whole set of pictures taken in the Lord Palmerston, which I believe was the last night before it shut.
Oh, really? Oh, I'd love to see those.
And some amazing pictures. There's about 20 of them. Everybody having a very, very nice time. And the building is still there. In fact, it's recently.
I know. I pass by regularly, and
yeah. Now it's a theatre, the Camden People's Theatre. Yeah. Great. Okay. So, Nama, would you like to say something about what you think about the site?
Before I go.
Oh yeah.
If I wanted to see those pictures, what would I do? Will they be eventually on the website?
They're on the website.
Oh, they are already.
They're there, yeah, they're there.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
They're already there, yeah.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much, Christoph.
Thank you.
Nama?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't expect to speak, but well, I'm gonna join everyone in the thanks. I haven't rummaged as much as I'd like to. I'd have liked to in terms of the website, because it's quite big. I've read a few of the stories and seen a lot of pictures, and I've already got friends in Russia who'd love me to send them the link, because they're very curious. It sounds very romantic, this oral history of a 70s squat in the centre of London. So I think there'll be quite a few people curious to see it. No, I think it's amazing that you've put it together. I was very moved to see the photos, actually, when my mom first pulled them out and started to show me that you were working on this project, and the depth and the extent of what you can see. It was really astonishing. So I think, I think it's an amazing resource. And if people start to engage with it, also from my generation, it's very, it can evolve a bit, potentially, I guess.
Great. We've got Natalia's story actually only just gone up, which we're very pleased with. Went up yesterday or today.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah. I'm very happy.
Great. Okay, so I've got a terrible echo on my computer. I hear myself twice. Okay, I think we're coming to a sort of natural conclusion, unless there's anybody else who wants to make a contribution.
Can I just make a comment, Patrick? May I just make a final sort of comment, if I may?
Yes, please.
I find it really fascinating looking at you all your different faces, and trying to reflect on the respectability of you all compared to the earlier photographs of you all in the 70s. But the other comparison I can't help making is looking back. I just wonder how many of you there were in some of the squats, because in my analysis of Tolmers Square during our period of ownership, I find it fascinating that back in sort of 1891 and 1881 census returns, there were an average of 17 people in each house in Tolmers Square. Amazing density. But what is even more amazing, listening to all of the different people and your nationalities and so on, at that time there were at least 17 different nationalities living in the square. There was an amazing array of occupations amongst the people, and I suspect that if we knew all your occupations, there would be an amazing array of occupations amongst you all as well. I mean, I gave up count at one point. I came across over 30 different occupations from various people living in the square at one time. And it's just that sort of that juxtaposition of history and your own history, which I really find quite interesting. And thank you very much for all the effort and for letting me join in your celebration today.
Well, I can tell you that when I moved into number 11, which was in your family's ownership, I think there were only 4 of us living there, and it was like one person per floor, 4 floors. The basement was full of junk. So yeah, 4 people. Yes. Okay. So I think that's where we are now. It's been brilliant to bring everybody together, and so as I said at the outset, we want the site to develop. We want people to provide, if you've got anything in your drawers or photographs or anything like that, to scan them and send them to us. If you haven't written a story, write one, or get in touch with me and we'll do one together. So the more things we can get up there, the better. And then what we will definitely do is have some real social events, COVID rules permitting, which I can put on in my office, which is opposite the entrance to Tolmer Square. So hopefully that may happen, and within a couple of months we can actually have a real live get together and take it from there. So from my point of view, it's been an absolutely brilliant project. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed working on this and pulling it together. and rediscovering the memories or pinning them all down and being in touch with everybody. It's been a fantastic experience. And so the other, of course, sad thing is that we are losing people steadily. We've lost 3 or 4 of our very close friends from that time over the last few years who've died. And so it just feels even more urgent that we've got to pin this down and get all our memories together and recorded, so that we've got, you know, we've got this site created for posterity, for social historians, for everybody else to see just what we were up to in the 1970s. It was a special time. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining in. We have got your details, obviously, on our mailing list, and we're going to be in touch, and we'll let you know when there is another event. So until then, we'll keep in touch. Lovely to speak to you all. Bye-bye.